the thing that was discouraging to me about this game is not just that it eliminated, any real margin for error that you have to try and make the tournament, but it just gives you this feeling of like, oh, they really are like running out of gas here, which, was a legitimate fear the whole time, but it's easy to get swept up in the good vibes of a 6-game win streak and all the big wins that, hey, this isn't going to happen. But it kind of feels like that.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into another edition of 3Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined by Derek Young and Cole Manbeck. K-State loses to Utah. They go 0-2 out in the state of Utah, hopefully never to return again. Maybe we can get Gene on the phone, talk to Bray Yormark, move that game with Utah in the football season that's going to be there at the end of the year. I would prefer never to play a game in the state of Utah again. It's a great segue into Holiday Distillery. Look, they've got bourbon, they've got vodka, lots of it. Yeah, it's even out in Utah. So if you're there for the football game, preemptively just stock up or make sure you have it in the budget to go get some out there, some Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon or some 360 vodka. Thank you to our good friends at Holiday Distillery. Man, that was painful. Those who are on the Discord, patreon.com/3ma, if you want to become a member of our Patreon community and be on the Discord, could tell during the game thread on Monday that that's as mad as I've been all season. Like, I very quickly this season, I think I was perhaps the earliest adopter to like, things are very bad early on in the year. So I kind of, emotionally shut down pretty early. Then the season, they were 7-11. So it was like very easy to turn off any emotion or really like, caring about individual results of what was going on. But they sucked you back in, man. They win 6 straight. They played as well as they did through that stretch. And then the tournament's right there. You got bowl teams losing around you. They're creeping up there in bracketology. And you just need to go beat a terrible Utah team. I'm sorry. I do not respect that Utah basketball team. That is not a good team at all. And to lose that game, it was as pissed as I've been all season. That's such a disgusting loss. And I get it. There's things going on that we'll talk about, Coleman Hawkins' health, perhaps a part of it, but like, just that one drove me up a wall, both how it happened and who the opponent was and the importance of where it is in the season right before a long week of rest before you play Arizona State. So, DY, you were out there, set the scene for us, buddy. What was it like?
To be honest, I guess I wasn't as frustrated as you guys. And I don't know if it was the proximity to it, but I could tell pretty early on that this team had no legs for that Utah game. I think they have illness going through the team. They have some guys that are a little bit banged up right now. I think this 6-day stretch in which they have no games is probably going to be pretty impactful. I think they needed it in the worst way. The only frustrating part was they got dominated on the glass by Utah, and that's where they lost the game, and they were clear about that in post-game and very accountable for it. Some of it was the Utah size, but there was some of it that was the ball watching a little bit that kind of rubbed me a little bit the wrong way. So I think that's the only phase of that game that completely shattered. I wouldn't say shattered, but completely had me a little, ticked about what we were doing ourselves. But between, the illness, the being banged up, the having no legs, I think that's probably the worst whistle that Kansas State got all year too. They did it to themselves. I'm not saying they lost because of the injuries, but the whistles were bad. At one point, Utah was out attempting them at the free throw line 19-2. And it wasn't because Kansas State wasn't aggressive. They were going to the rim just as much as Utah and just not getting the same officiation, in my opinion. But you only have 1 or 2 guys making shots, probably a sign that you didn't have your legs. But I understand the frustration because it's one that you obviously had to have. It basically eviscerates and eliminates any margin for error in terms of NCAA tournament hopes. I get all that, but And Utah isn't really talented. You're probably right to not respect them. But they also had the flukiest of all flukiest games, the way they shot at the free throw line, because the refs gave them a tremendous whistle, too.
Well, that's the other part that just I'm not as I know like Mason both really torched the officials. Like I'm not thrilled with it, but I would not. I don't know.
Just in there, I will say it's the worst officiated game I've seen in a Kansas State game this year.
Well, we'll agree to disagree a little bit on that. I'm not going to sit here and blame the officials for anything there.
Even Kellis, who never goes that way, was just flabbergasted by the officiating in that game.
The flagrant or whatever when they upgraded it to that was pretty.
And all the hooks that they called on K-State but didn't call on Utah. If those refs for the Kansas State Utah game Monday would have officiated Kansas State at BYU Saturday, they would have called BYU for 40 hooks because that's how BYU got to the rim. It just kept like basically moving screen and grabbing Kansas State, throwing them out of the way.
I don't know. I'll plant my flag in because I'm guessing Cole's going to be more on Derek's side. Just a hunch, but I'm guessing Cole's going to be a little bit more on Derek's side.
He's probably going to be more in the middle, but I know that he will probably agree with the officiating part of it.
I'm not going to I'm not going to waste much time talking about the officiating. Don't get your ass kicked on the boards.
The officiating didn't lose you at BYU, but man, that Utah game, that felt a little crummy.
Don't get your ass kicked on the boards. Make a layup, Doug, at the end of the game when Utah's trying to throw the game away to you.
Yes, but then Danny Gasol gets the offensive rebound and gets tackled, and they call him for a travel.
Make some jump shots. I mean, David Gasson play a better game. David Gasson play a better game challenge. It hasn't gone very well the last couple of games. I'm gonna, and I love you, DNG. You didn't deserve that, but I'm frustrated. I'm just more frustrated with the team than I am officiating coming out of all that. But one of the most maddening things about it is, yes, you've got this jackwagon, who might as well be underhanding shots from the free throw line, having a career day at the line after going 1 of 9 against Kansas and shooting 35% on the year, and he's banking them in. That's what I mean. And the team, the team shoots damn near 80% from the line. Shove that. Come on, man.
Their 50% free throw shooter was 7-7.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Osser and Lawson Lovering were a combined 14 and 19 from the free throw line, and he's 57% on the year, Lovering 35% on the season. So, I mean, that obviously hurt. Utah 77% from the free throw line. It's the highest percentage they've shot since the second game of the season. The 30 free throw attempts tie for the third most on the season for Utah. The 47.6 free throw rate was the second highest given up by K-State this season as well. So, a little bad luck there. And then K-State, 10 free throw attempts, the fewest allowed by Utah all season in regulation of a game. The 6 made free throws tie for the second fewest allowed by Utah. And unfortunately, that's not a season low for K-State. The Wildcats' 16.7 free throw rate was only the 7th lowest mark on the season for the team. We'll get into that in the show as well, because K-State just hasn't been a team that plays aggressive enough and gets to the free throw line and rebounds the ball well enough on the defensive end. So we can talk about that too. But for me, it all just gets back to rebounding. I mean, to get beat 51-28 on the glass and to give up 21 offensive rebounds, that's a season high for Utah. Their previous high was 15. Utah had 98 offensive rebounds in their previous 11 games. That's an average of 8.9 per game. You give up 21. All right. Their previous high was 15. And you could see it from the start. I mean, they're just killing K-State on the inside. It's not like, I mean, Lovering's big. He's 7'1", but it's not like they're a huge team with a bunch of size. To me, that was inexcusable for Kansas State to get crushed in that way in a game that they knew they had to have. And I struggle with the legs thing only because, like, if you don't have legs at the start of that second game in the 2-game stretch, then I don't know, like I could see the legs late in the game.
I think they were running out of legs against BYU. I think their legs were gassed from everything they put forth to go on a 6-game winning streak, too. I think that was a gauntlet for them. They had to play Iowa State, Kansas, and Arizona. I think they were running out of gas already because they play 6 guys a ton of minutes because they don't have a bench. They had to play 20 minutes of Ugo, and to be honest, that hurt just as much as anything because you have a 7-footer in there trying to rebound against the team that does have some size because their shortest starter is 6'6", and Ugo goes 20 minutes and grabs 2 rebounds when one of them was an accident.
Yeah, we can touch on Ugo as well. I mean, look, Ugo with 2 rebounds in 17 minutes, and now in his last 30 minutes of game action over 4 games, he has 3 rebounds. I mean, what?
And one of them was, like, let's be honest, one of them was an accident. It just, like, somehow got in his hand.
One of them was off a missed free throw, and the other was where he got beat in transition. The guy missed a shot, and it got deflected into his stomach, and it just like, oh, it's here. I mean, come on. Like, get off the floor and rebound. Now, you have 4 block shots in the game because they tried to attack him one-on-one a few times. That's great, but you can't. You're 7 feet tall. You got to rebound the basketball, man. And his, yeah.
The other times when they didn't take him one-on-one, he was giving up a lot of buckets while they had taken him out of the game because they had foul trouble for Gasol and Hawkins. So.
Yeah, he had his season high for rebounds in a game is 5, and he's only done that once. So every other game he's been at 4 or below. And again, I know he doesn't play a ton of minutes, but when he is in there, the reason you don't play a ton of minutes because you don't rebound the basketball, and they get him in isolation and pick and drops, and he doesn't head. I mean, look. That was clearly a mistake in the portal. We'll just say that. Everybody.
Yeah, I was going to say, I destroyed one player too, but man, he's rough right now.
Yeah.
Was a point of reference. Doug McDaniel has, 1, 2, 3, 4, has 4 games with more than 5 rebounds this year. Doug McDaniel.
Yeah, and so just to get back to DY's point too on look, the 6-game gauntlet they went through where, they were laying it all on the line to get themselves in this position. Look, that is what you do to yourself as a team when you leave yourself no margin for error, obviously. We'll start.
For me, I have a hard time saying the problem was this road trip. The problem was what you did before that 6-game winning streak, because this road trip, these things are typically going to happen at some point in the season.
Well, you even remember it was this time of year with Marquise and Keontae in that 2020-23 team in February when they lost 3 of 4. They lost to a really bad Oklahoma and Texas Tech team.
Yep. You hit a point in the year where you just, for 3 or 4 days, you just don't have it. And I think this was that point for them. And then a lot of the flukiness that Utah got away with in combination, that's going to happen once or twice a year too. But it's hard to feel bad for them because you are unable to survive this because of how you played the first, 15 games.
But for me, I'm similar to John just because, my thought going into this road trip was split it, and you still got a shot. Then you start thinking about it, go 4-1 down the stretch. It's realistic, and they just, Utah's not very good by any means, and that's a game K-State should.
Utah now has beaten Kansas State, and BYU. Hell,
I know. I mean, I don't.
They're not good. I mean, we just saw what BYU did to Kansas. Kansas is
Utah beat BYU at home.
Kansas is the worst of the team. Any team that's been mentioned on the show as of right now.
14-2 at home.
Currently, Kansas is the worst of any team that's been mentioned right now. The way that they are. So I'm with you. I'm with you, Cole. I don't
think Utah is good, but somehow they're 14-2 at home.
Yeah, it's a game you had to have, and now you sit here you got to go 5-0 down the stretch, and that's
save that thought because Cole, you were the one that pointed out what Lenardi said. Okay,
I will say this: Lenardi is really the outlier right now because. And I was going over, I think it was with Tellis on our way back from Utah. Lenardi has Kansas State still has a 6th or 7th team out. Torvik has Kansas State as his 19th team out now. Evan Miyakawa has him as his 27th team out now. So Lenardi is tremendously the outlier at this point.
Well, I've always said Lenardi is the smartest man when it comes to bracketology. He started the bracketology, all right? So, sorry, Evan and Bart, even though Evan, friend of Three Ma on the show, we rely on Joe Lenardi for bracketology right now because it's what says better things for us.
I think they have to win all 5. Maybe there's a case you could make for 4-1, but you probably have to get the quad 1A win as part of that 4-1 record, which is a home against Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I just felt like what they need is wins. They've got enough upper tier. I get the point that you're making, but they've got enough upper tier wins. They just.
Why I said that is I think if they beat Iowa State, it'd be their 5th quad 1A win, if I'm correct.
Fourth.
And no 4th. and no team that has had 4 or more quad 1A wins has ever missed the NCAA tournament.
Sorry, Dewey, I do have to actually fix that too, because Kansas has decided to take themselves as a quad 1A win territory. They dropped from 15th to 21st in the net with last night's 34-point loss. So they actually could. People were asking last night, could KU fall out of K-State's quad 1 win territory? It would take a pretty good collapse, but they have fallen from like 8th to 21st in the last 2 weeks. So they only have to drop to 30 to fall out of that, or 31, to fall out of quad 1 since it was a home game.
Man, 40 chess from Bill Self. Knowing how to really stick it to the Cats, man. 4D chess. We'll just go start losing by 34 on the road and see what happens, K-State. See where your tournament resume goes. Take that. Man. Yeah, this was supposed to be, I caught a bit of the radio broadcast last night, and they were talking about like, man, well, this was supposed to be the stretch where we thought things got a little more manageable. I don't know. Look, it's all we got. That's all we can take solace in right now. Let's take some solace in home field apparel. Okay, homefieldapparel.com. They've got gear to make sure that you look good, whether K-State is losing or not. Homefieldapparel.com has 50-plus K-State designs. They've got 100-plus other schools. Derek, just a plain white sweater today?
I wore Mickey Mouse today for Cole, since he just came back from Disney.
Oh, that's so nice of you.
Okay, well, I'm sure you can get UCF gear at Home Field Apparel, which, Orlando. Nice tie-in there. But use promo code 3MA24 for 15% off your first order. That's promo code 3MA24 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com, and we're back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
I mean, what else specifically from this game deserves mention here? I just kind of sat there in disbelief toward the end of the game, where it's like, Brendan Hassen is making ridiculous threes. Utah is throwing the ball away, like kind of actively trying to hand you the game. And then, for Doug Doug continues to play well. He's the one guy where it's just,
shot.
He still was playing well on this road trip. He's the one guy that's been consistent through the road trip, but he does biff the layup there at the end of the game. Now, I guess we could argue, if the problem is legs and guys being gassed, what kind of a chance did they really have in overtime? But it beats obviously the alternative of what happened. There's a play late, Coleman Hawkins, and we can talk about where he's at right now, but they let Madsen get loose for a three when it was pointed out by Sean Farnham on the broadcast, like Coleman Hawkins just did not step out and try to get a hand in the face. Just there are plenty of plays down the stretch that are really frustrating for sure.
Yeah, the Doug blows that layup, unfortunately, and that sucks because he's playing terrific still. So I'm not really going to harp on a single play. David Gasson gets the offensive rebound, mind you, and gets tackled. He gets whistled for a travel right after. So does he make the layups there anyway? I don't know. I like the look they got for Brendan Hassen. He'd have been making that shot for most of the game. Just came up a little short. Again, end of the game, end of the road trip is that legs. Coleman Hawkins, there are some plays out there where, I don't know if I said I'm going to cut him some slack, but he's clearly someone that's really, I'll say this. I saw Coleman Hawkins leave the floor, like after the game, come from one tunnel to the other, I think, to probably get on the bus. And that was not a guy that was very nimble. That was a guy that was walking with a very heavy limp. One that you would wonder how he just played a 40-minute basketball game. So I don't know if cut him some slack is the word, but in some cases I probably would understand it since he seems to be far from 100%. But on the three-pointer where he did step out, he didn't attempt to do that. So I don't think that's associated with injury. I think that was associated with the defensive breakdown and misassignment on his end.
Yeah. Look, Coleman Hawkins hasn't looked right since the Arizona game, to be honest. The KU game, he has 5 block shots, 12 points, 5 rebounds, or what do you have? I don't know what the assist number were in that game. 8 assists, I believe. Like, he looked really good against Kansas. He looked explosive. He was getting off the floor. But since then, the Arizona game, he got abused on the boards. He only had 2 rebounds, and he doesn't look healthy. I mean, and so I don't know what's going on there, but you can't survive games, especially on the road, when Coleman Hawkins over the last 3 games has scored 7 points or less in each of the 3. And then David Gasson on the road trip scores 7 against Utah, and he scores 6 against BYU.
Well, I will say this with David Gasson is he's not a totally straight up one-on-one player. So when Coleman Hawkins isn't his normal self and demanding the same kind of attention that he typically has during that winning streak, David Gasson is not going to get the same opportunities. So his lack of production might be a result of Coleman not really scaring other teams.
Well, and those two play well together when they're out there because,
they're perfect for one another. But Dave really needs Coleman to be himself for him to kind of.
Yeah, that's all good. That's a good point, because the one thing you notice about David when he's out there, like, he knows where to cut. When Hawkins gets the ball,
like diving towards
he finds the openings, and Hawkins knows where to find him.
Hawkins acquires the double team because he demands attention, and the best passer out of a double team, maybe in college basketball, is Coleman Hawkins.
Yeah, which I always think it's silly to anyone double team.
Yes, yeah, I always thought
he's not looking to score. Like, you double team him, you're doing exactly what he wants. Like, he's going to find the open guy.
More than anything, they miss his defense and maybe rebounding intensity. But it's a funny thing. You kind of look at the stats, and I know it doesn't really take rate into account. I mean, Coleman Hawkins is still your second leading rebounder and also led the team with 7 assists.
Yeah, and that's – you had to play some of the game. Gasson plays 29, Hawkins plays 24 minutes because each one has 4 fouls. Moby, CJ, they have 4 fouls each as well. So you battled foul trouble in the game. I'll say about Doug, like, the thing that impressed me about Doug is he played 38 minutes against Utah. He played 37 against BYU. And I didn't see effort issues from him. I didn't see him try to, I thought he was giving max effort on both ends of the court and playing hard. And he would have been easy for him. You think about the last 5 games, 38, 37, 37, 36, 37. They can't take Doug off the floor. And not only that, Doug's got the ball in his hands, which is more exhausting because he can't relax on.
It's the same thing they asked how to Marquise Noel.
Yeah, and I love that he's taken it and he's not complaining and he's not out there with his.
He also didn't play as much early in the season.
Well, he probably has fresher legs than
he got less mileage on his legs than a lot of the other people because he was being benched early throughout the year.
Yeah. But I just, just continued to see encouraging signs from Doug. But outside of that, it's this rebound. Like, you get beat by 10 on the glass at BYU, and you get beat by 23 on the glass at Utah. So you're outboarded by 33 over the 2-game span. And look, I think the concern I have, guys, is that we're now talking about a 3-year problem when it comes to rebounding. And the 2 highest offensive rebounding percentages by a K-State opponent in the Tang era have occurred this season. And 4 of the top 7 highest offensive rebounding rates have happened this season. K-State's now allowing an offensive rebounding rate of 33% this season. That ranks 314th in the country. K-State's offensive rebounding percentage is 29.6. That ranks 196 nationally. But when you look specifically at offensive rebounding rate by an opponent, K-State was 30.5% last season, 245th in the country, and 30.3% in 2022-23, 264th in the country. Now they're at 33%. So this is the worst offensive rebounding team by a decent margin out of the 3 teams, and they were trying to address that. We thought they were going to address that. They added so much size, guys, this offseason. Like, you add Hawkins. Now, Ashore obviously doesn't work out. You add Anienzo, David Gasson. You got By Fall on the bench. You got, we thought they'd be able to rebound the ball, and they have not been able to defensive rebound. And now they've given up the 2nd and 7th highest offensive rebounding rates in the Tang era in just a span of 2 days. And so that's frustrating. It's disappointing. They haven't. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's the way they defend and they get caught in mismatches because of rotations, and they got Doug or somebody small boxing out.
Because they switch everything. But when they started to switch everything is when they went on a 6-game winning streak too. So you kind of, that was part of the simplification. Part of it is the size that you were you added this year to kind of eliminate that being an issue, like you said, really isn't playing. Tour is, I don't know if he's back in Australia, but he's not in Manhattan. By Falls not playing any minutes. Ugo's 7 foot, but he can't rebound. So you're asking guys that aren't really of size to rebound with 7-footers, I guess is the way I would put it, right? Because if you have one of Hawkins or Gasson not in the game, then you're asking one of your 6'4" or 6'5" guys to out rebound a 6'11" guy. And you could do that over a few games, but not over every game of a season. So I don't know if that's part of it too, because if you think about it, Kansas State doesn't play a whole lot of size anymore because they don't have it, because one is maybe redshirting, one is no longer with the team, one can't rebound for some reason. So I don't know what the answer is either.
They went really small. I remember at one point it was they had Colin Hawkins in at the 5, and it was 4 guards with him. So I mean, yeah, there's and Moby, bless his heart, Moby tries his ass off on the glass, but he can only do so much again because he's
Doug's guarding someone at 6'7" because that was the shortest guy on the floor for Utah.
Yeah, so maybe I should. I said Utah's not that big of a team. I mean, like I was thinking more prototypical center. They got Lovering, but they do have more size, probably 1 through 5 than a lot of teams. The other thing I was going to say, K-State's free throw rate, guys, is 28.2 on the season. That ranks 317 in the country.
Yeah.
What
I think that's an issue, but I think they earned themselves more fouls than they got at Utah.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. It's strange to me because like last year they were like they didn't have guys that could blow by and get to the rim last year. In case it was 43rd in free throw rate last season at 38.3%. This year they're at 28.2, 307. Look at
Max was getting to the rim like all the time. He was missing or not getting a call.
I mean, I think Cole said, we're talking like big picture trend here. Like that's, and I don't, Tyler Perry did a pretty good job, Cole. It seemed like last year in the back half of the season, that's probably what a lot of that is. He got himself to the line a lot and was an excellent free throw shooter, which definitely helped out too. But I'm with you. I think if you go through the context of the year, we could play back a ton of tape from shows we've done where we would say, well, they're not getting to the rim. They're not getting to the rim. They're not getting to the rim. So
I bet if we look at the last 8 games, they are. So that's why I'm a little out on that a little bit.
Yeah. Then they were 54th in the country in the Marquise Keontae season at 36.1%. So it's by far the lowest free throw rate of the Tang era. Look, I don't know if like officials come into the game, just like they look at those like, well, K-State's not a team that really gets to the rim, so they don't get the benefit of the doubt. Like they don't have free throw statistics of a team that gets to the line a lot, like a Frank Martin team, that's going to crash the glass and they're going to get to the line 30 times a game. I don't know if it's reputationally biased with officials going into the game, but I also just think it's probably part of the way K-State plays. And I agree with you. Like they attack the rim a decent amount in the second half, especially Max.
Doug, like that one time, Doug, I don't know if it was a breakaway, but he got like a tackled when he was going up for that layup on the left side.
Yeah, I obviously wasn't thrilled with the officiating, but I'd put more of it on K-State's rebounding and like
I would too.
Yeah, and like you defended pretty well. Like Utah shot 38%. They were 30% at half, and you hold them to 3 of 19 from 3. I think it was their worst 3.
Stop turning them over though.
Yeah, it was their worst 3-point percentage in the season.
But Utah's in the 300s in turnover rate. Kansas State turned them over a lot early and then kind of stopped doing that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, big picture here. That's where I'm going to go for the top storyline brought to you by our friends at Alinco. If you have any home improvement needs, go to alincohome.com. That's ALENCO home.com. Get hooked up with some great K-Staters to help you take care of those home improvement needs. Just what are the odds? The thing that was discouraging to me about this game is not just that it eliminated any real margin for error that you have to try and make the tournament, but it just gives you this feeling of like, oh, they really are like running out of gas here, which, was a legitimate fear the whole time, but it's easy to get swept up in the good vibes of a 16 win streak and all the big wins that, hey, this isn't going to happen. But it kind of feels like that, Coleman Hawkins looks like he's limping around. It did look like they had issues with legs by the end of the BYU game. So it's like, are they just limping to the finish line here? Like, is it possible? So that's the question I'll frame to you guys. Like, how realistic is it to even think we'll set the baseline at 4-1. Let's go with what Joe Lenardi said. If 4-1 gives you a chance, like what are the odds that this team even has it in the tank at this point to go 4-1 or 5-0 the rest of the way?
I think they can, just because this is the longest, I think, break that they're going to get between games that they've had probably since December. So I think that can be impactful in many ways. And I think this is probably one of their easier 3-game stretches. Not to take anyone lightly, but I think Kansas State does win their next 3 games. I think you do beat Arizona State at home. I think they can go to and beat UCF, because that's probably their simplest road game left. Not that there's a simple road game in the Big 12. And then you play Colorado at home, who has, one Big 12 win? So I think they win the next 3, if you're really putting a gun to my head and asking what I expect. So then it's like, then you just have to win one of what I think is 2 really challenging games then at Cincinnati and home against Iowa State. To be clear, I think you probably still have to do more in Kansas City if you're 4-1, in my opinion. But I think 4-1 is doable. And I really think that they're getting a longer break at a perfect time.
Yeah, so if you go 4-1, then you're not going to play on that opening night of the Big 12 tournament. You'd finish 11-9 in the Big 12. You'd finish top 8 in all likelihood and get that at least first bye, and be playing on the Wednesday night instead. Look, I said on the Discord, John, you saw it, like it would be very like this team, like after I've just kind of emotionally checked out after a painful Utah loss, where I didn't sleep well that night, because it was just like, man, what's there to look forward to? That's what's sad. Like, fall to 500, and I'm tossing and turning all night upset because they fell to 500 on February 17th or whatever it was against Utah. All right, that impacted my life. And so maybe I have some issues that a Utah loss does that. But it would be very like this team to win the next 3, and we're like, okay, little 2-game stretch here. You win at Cincy, and you're back in, just like last year. The Cincinnati game was so huge, right? And that game, they pulled you in. Like, they were down like 15, and they come back and take a 1-point lead with like 10 seconds left, and Lukosius hits a 3 to beat you. You're like, oh, we're going to get on the right side of the bubble, and then bam, the gut punch at the very end. And so, like, I could see them win the next 3. I think they're going to beat Colorado and Arizona State at home. All right. Arizona State's really scuffling, even though I know they gave Tech a dogfight last week. They're 3-12 now in the standings, 3-11. I don't know. It's not good. They got smoked by Houston last night on their home court. I think they'll win those 2 home games. UCF is the more winnable road game. Cincinnati's got a realistic shot at the NCAA tournament, tougher atmosphere. UCF is a game you can win. You'll have to win, obviously. If you can go 3-0 in this stretch, you sit at 16-13. There is a foreseeable, realistic scenario where you look in the mirror and you're like, win the next 2. And we're probably on the right side of the bubble, depending on what happens in the conference tournaments. But it's hard for me to get there, to think that this team... Now, I will say, like, they won 6 in a row against a far harder stretch. Right? Like, this is far easier. We're talking about winning 5 in a row, but it's hard for me, based off what I saw in the state of Utah the last couple of games, to think they're going to have the legs to be able to do it. But maybe they hit another hot stretch. And, like DY said, if they go 4-1, I think they have to win probably 2 in KC. And does this team even have the ability to play back-to-backs and play well with the way the legs have looked? Like, that's another question. As you think about the conference tournament, you talk about Coleman Hawkins.
Yeah, well, that's exactly, yeah. When I started thinking about, hey, if it's going to be 4-1 and then you got to do some damage in Kansas City, I'm like, all right, well, that seems like a worst case sort of scenario for this team. And then even if we're, projecting to the NCAA tournament, that kind of sucks too. You're going to have to be playing back-to-back games in pretty close proximity. So I don't know, hope the best for Coleman Hawkins. Hope things can hold up. Hope the guys are able to pull together and use this week as best they can. We shall see. I'm going to have to pop out, but I bid you guys adieu. Take care. Rest of the show.
I mean, I don't know what else I've got to add, DY. Do you have anything else to add?
I think the break, a little bit of a longer break here, is pivotal. And I think they win the next 3 games. I really do. I don't think they lose at UCF. And like you, it's hard to see them losing at home against Arizona State and Colorado. So I think you are sitting there at 3-0. Some of it will come down to the strides that Coleman Hawkins can take, but I'm not as down as you guys because, it's a full game season, and I think you take everything into account just as easily as you guys can kind of put out there that you're defining them by 2 games. I can define them by the 6 before that.
Yeah. No. Though we could also define them by what happened before that 6, right? And so there's in between there, probably. Like it sucks because they gave us a glimpse of what this team could really be in that 6-game stretch, and they might have buried themselves in too big of a hole. We'll see. Our friend Bart Torvik has K-State beating Arizona State 75-70. They have us beating Colorado 75-66, and then the UCF game, which I think people will find of note, 42% win probability for K-State, projected margin of 2 points, 80-78 in favor of UCF. So that'll be a tightly projected game on the Vegas line. And then DY, 34% chance to win at Cincinnati and 35% chance to beat Iowa State at home. I mean, Bart Torvik projects the 3 losses to be by 2, 3, and 4 points.
We'll see what happens tonight because UCF is in Stillwater. But you talked about Arizona State scuffling. UCF's lost 6 straight. They're scuffling too.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah, they don't have much.
I get it that it's in Orlando, but I think we're also, just because it's a road game, giving UCF maybe a little bit too much credit too. I mean, that's a team that's lost 6 straight. You're mad because K-State lost 2 straight.
I'm mad at the whole context of the season at this point, right? I mean,
right. I know, but I was just, I was manipulating the situations to kind of show a path forward. Like UCF is not scary.
No, if you're going to be serious, like you got to win that game. And yeah, it's not, I would say that like it's obviously not a daunting atmosphere by any means at UCF.
And if they lose tonight at Oklahoma State, which is clearly possible, UCF plays Wednesday night at Oklahoma State, that's 7 straight losses.
Yeah.
And after that, they play Utah and K-State at home.
Yeah, I mean, you'll wonder where their head's at because the tournament's really not realistic for UCF at this point. I would say, like, not a daunting atmosphere, but K-State lost at Oklahoma State in front of 1,000 people, and at Utah with no atmosphere, they lost at TCU.
I will say they lost at Oklahoma State when they were the worst version of themselves. And I still would push back on K-State reverting back to that version, because even in losses at BYU and Utah, I don't think that they were the worst versions of themselves that we saw prior to the 6-game winning streak.
Yeah. It's more so just a matter of, can they're so good at home. Can they carry it over and play well on the road? If you beat UCF, you beat Arizona State.
And I think what happened in Salt Lake City, I know you guys are offering more criticism towards them than I am, and I might be the one that's wrong on that, but I just think it just felt like a perfect storm of shit. Like some stuff that was out of their control. Like, I do think that's the worst whistle they gotten at least in Big 12 games this year, and I don't think it's close. And then Utah shoots out of their mind from the free throw line. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, that part is that's bad luck.
And that was part of the game plan. Even Tank said it afterwards. It's like, yeah, if we got beat, we were just going to foul them.
Yeah, I mean, and look, they have had, I think I looked it up earlier today, actually, and this is a matter of bad luck. K-State's opponents are shooting 74.4% from the free throw line, I believe, which actually is 296 in the country from K-State's perspective. So, they're having some bad luck in terms of what their opponents are shooting at the foul line.
Yeah, but he was so eviscerated at the line that he was banking them in.
Yeah, no, and that gives you a lift, right? When that gives you an emotional lift.
Crowd
you
was
feel the energy.
The Bronx cheer that they talk about?
Yeah.
Like, he was getting standing ovations from the crowd every time he made a free throw.
Yeah, it feels like bonus points when those go in, and it gives the crowd more juice. It gives the team more juice. And so, yeah, those are certainly some unexpected points. And, I was at the point late in the game where I was just foul lovering every time and hope the law of averages start to play out, which they did a little bit.
It started to, but he was still making 1 of 2 every time he went.
Yeah. So but again, like, if you rebound the basketball, then you're likely going to avoid some of that foul trouble.
No, some of those were definitely a result. And I think I missed rebound by Coleman got David Gasson initially in foul trouble, right? So
Yeah. So, I guess we'll see where this goes, but maybe everyone will feel better if they play really well and dominate Arizona State. K-State's now fallen to 76th in the net DUI, so they got an uphill climb. Now you go 5-0, you're going to climb the net, naturally, and at least be in the 60s. But you probably need to be. Somebody had shared with me yesterday, I think it was Parker on the Discord, shared that the lowest ranked net team to make it with 14 losses was ranked 55th in the net. So K-State's got a climb to go. But again, if you win 5 in a row, you're with 2 of those being on the road and 1 of those being Iowa State at home, you're probably going to climb a decent amount. So we'll see. As you check off wins, it'll become more realistic, more feasible. So we'll start with Arizona State, and then then go win at UCF. Then you look at it as like a 3-game season with the worst team in the Big 12 coming in, then a road game at Cincinnati, and then Iowa State in Manhattan to conclude the season. Honestly, kind of feels like that Iowa State game could be like the game last year, DY, where, K-State knew they were still going to have to do work in KC, but knocked off the Cyclones in Manhattan. Only difference is they're going for the sweep this time.
Yeah. Of course, you want to make the NCAA tournament, missing it. And if you were to miss it 2 years in a row, that's worthy of criticism. But I will say I got more good moments out of this year than we thought we were getting. Like getting to beat Iowa State in Hilton Coliseum, potentially sweeping the Cyclones. Still fun moments, even in a season that, no matter what, even if you probably make the NCAA tournament, it's going to fall short of expectations.
Yeah. I mean, at least you got a glimmer of hope and some fun moments, like you said, beating Arizona and Manhattan too, and also just gives you a little bit of hope for the future next year, because you've seen what Doug can be if he's back, assuming he's back, and alignment with Jerome Tang. And then, like, if you can get Max Jones a waiver, and you talk about Brendan Hassan, Max, and Doug as like a three pieces to help build around. Moby is a guy that, can have a role next year as well. And, you start to think, okay, and Tyreek Smith, he gets his waiver for eligibility, then you might only have to go get like 4 guys in the pool.
It'll be an old team.
Yeah. So we'll see.
If you think about it, the funny thing is, like, Kansas State's really not that old right now. I mean, they played 3 seniors, but
yeah, I mean, in that scenario, we're talking about Doug being a 4th-year player, Max 5, Brendan Hassan 4, Moby, really like still young in terms of basketball stage, but like, yeah, 3rd or 4th year.
Tyreek's been in college like 7 years by this point.
Yeah. Taj Manning, if he's back, be going into his 4th year as well off the bench. David Castillo will be going into year 2. CJ Jones will be going into his 4th year if he was back.
And then the transfers that you pick up are probably older.
Yeah. That's typically the case. So yeah, you could be an older team. Now Nick could correct me if I'm wrong. I think KU might be like the most experienced team in college basketball, or one of the most experienced teams.
The pieces don't fit. So that's another thing. Like, that doesn't matter if they don't fit. Like, Kansas State, for a while, to be honest, it didn't start to fit a little bit until Achor left, because then you definitely played Coleman at the 4 at that point. Yeah. So you do have to take roster construction, fit on the court, like understand rules and everything. That's why Brendan Hassan and Max Jones are perfect, because those guys are absolutely selfless, unselfish, whatever, however you want to put it, and they will just be stars in their role and show up to work every day.
Yep. And you feel like one of them might be willing, if K-State went and got another guard this offseason, maybe one of them would be willing to go off the bench, because I think they're team guys and good leader types. So, we'll see. We'll have plenty of time to dissect where that goes a month from now, but hopefully we've got more wins to talk about and a fun end of the season. But was not a fun weekend or 2-day stretch. And Utah wasn't a fun 9-day stretch for DY, who lived on the road this entire time and now is welcome back to Manhattan to just miserably cold conditions. So welcome home, DY, and enjoy Arizona State on Sunday in Bramlage Coliseum. we'll be back to talk more about that next week and talk K-State basketball. But go check out our sponsors. Go again to lencohome.com, ALENCO home.com. Go pick up some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon from our friends at Holiday Distillery. Check out Home Field Apparel, discount code 3MAW24 for 15% off your entire order. For John Kurtz, who has left the show, and Derek Young, I'm Cole Manbeck signing off on another episode of 3MAW.